All right, welcome back to the Gateway Defense Podcast, everybody. As you can tell, we've got a little bit something different for you. We're actually in person with our guest today, which is pretty cool. So I think this format will be kind of neat. Today we are going to be talking about a topic that I think is pretty interesting. We'll jump around a little bit to a couple different topics, but mostly we're going to be talking about why competition shooting should inform your training. And maybe some advice for some people who are looking to get into competition shooting, even if they tend to kind of do other types of stuff for their line of work. Joining us in the discussion today is our buddy Matt Adams. Matt, good to have you on the podcast,
Thanks,
buddy.
Phil.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a good convo. So for those of you guys who don't know Matt, maybe just go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody,
Yeah.
who you are, what you do.
Yeah, my name's Matt. I'm active law enforcement, been active for about 19 years in Alabama. Started Eagle Tactics, my training company, back in late 2019. We travel around all the states training civilians and law enforcement.
Fantastic. So honestly, our business model is pretty similar.
Yes.
Going a lot of the same places, doing a lot of the same kind of stuff, which is cool. And actually have some collab classes this year together as well. So we'll be teaching day 1, day 2 type deal. So that's going to be fun. Okay, so topic of the day, right? We've had a lot of conversations about this. Getting into competition shooting, right? And how competition shooting changes almost everything about how you train and what's important, all that. So law enforcement, 19 years. You got into USPSA when?
Approximately 9 months ago.
9 months ago, okay? So you started really kind of getting on the performance shooting train earlier than that, but the matches didn't start until very recently.
Correct.
Okay, so tell me about that progression. Like, tell me about like who you were as a shooter and like what was important to you, why you started dabbling into that performance shooting world and maybe training with some of the, like, I guess, performance shooting instructors, and then like what actually pushed you over the edge to actually start shooting matches, because you weren't a bad shooter before you started shooting matches, right? And like you were, I would say, on a good path. So what kind of changed at that point as well?
Yep. So when I started off in law enforcement, I think the trend is naturally to get in like tactical classes.
Yeah.
So I took many instructors' tactical classes, and that's what I kind of focused on. Then as I progressed as a shooter, I started to notice higher level shooters that were like just blowing me out of the water, just devastating me. And it's like, how are they doing this? Like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? Because I know I can get to that level.
Yeah.
But how are they achieving it? So I was like, hey, what are you doing? What classes are you doing? And they tell me, hey, yeah, I'm training with these guys. Start looking up their backgrounds, like, oh, USPSA Grand Master. What's that? Let's look at that.
Okay.
I feel like we've all had that moment. We've all had that one moment where we saw like a GM or even an M, and we were like, "What is that? Like, what is that sorcery? How is that level of skill even possible?"
Yep. And that was very eye-opening for me at that point in time. So I started to take classes, as I would say, like performance shooting style classes, and looking at how are they being able to shoot fast and accurate and calling their shots every time.
Yeah. That was the biggest thing for me that was mind-blowing. Like that moment you're talking about, Justin, was like people splitting the gun really fast. I was like, how are you doing that? Like, how are you doing it with a level of accuracy that you are? Like, how can you say you can split the gun that fast and guarantee alphas or guarantee, whatever, like 8 ring and a B8 or like whatever it was? Like, I was like, how? Like, how? Because I can't, and I miss going slow. And so, like, that's pretty interesting. So you kind of got on the performance shooting journey, right? So how long do you feel like you were kind of chasing that before you started USPSA?
I would say probably a year and a half to 2 years of doing that. Then I saw like my level increase. I was shooting like, okay, I'm starting to perform higher, but like, what's the next step in this process, right? And that's when it was like, all right, you need to take a match. You need to just drop your ego, know that you're going to be very humbled out there, and go shoot your first match. First match I shot, very humbling, but just like that, it was like, okay, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
Like, I see how they're doing this. I don't know how they're doing it. Like, I don't completely understand how they are moving so fast and getting alphas all the time. right? And shooting stages 8 seconds faster than me.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yes.
Like, it's insane.
So that opened up that world to start training kind of USPSA style courses at that point in time.
Did you feel, before you shot your first match, did you feel like you had reached like the peak of human performance? Like, did you think to yourself, like, this is about as good as I'm going to get?
No, I felt like there was more on the table, but I didn't know how to get there. Okay. If that makes sense. Like, I knew there was more meat on that bone, but like, how did I get to it? And that was shooting the first match, opened my eyes on, okay, this is how you do it, like, to get to those progressions.
Yeah. So before you were shooting matches, you said like you were seeing a performance increase. Mm-hmm. How are you measuring that?
I used to measure it as on like standard drills. We can talk like that. Bill drills, Billy's, Barton's, 715, 25 bill drills. Yep. Just drills like of that nature. And again, that's where you're just practicing a drill. Sometimes it's just like gaming it. You know what you can do with those. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and in those standardized drills, I think that is probably a topic worth bringing up. But like those standardized drills, I think as you're first getting into performance shooting, like that was performance shooting to me when I started. It was like sub 2 second bill drills and sub-second draws and like Scott Jedlinski's Modern Samurai Project standards. 100%. I was like, that is like peak performance right there. The fast drill, like all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, like that dude's like a performance shooter, right?
Measuring speed and accuracy.
Right. Yeah.
Aggressive par times, and like I was like, yeah, like that. That's cool. Like, I want to do that.
There's a place for those, right? But that's not the peak level of performance shooting in my mind.
And it doesn't inform your training, right? So like, if you practice a drill over and over, like you will get really good at that drill,
right?
But it's not going to set you up for success to be able to solve other shooting problems necessarily.
Right, and to start analyzing like what's critiquing yourself, analyzing yourself as you shoot. Like,
right. Because, and the other thing with the standards is you could do them over and over, and so you don't have to be very critical because you just can do it again until you have a run that you're happy with, right? Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So first match, you shoot it. You said it was very humbling. How did you place in that match?
I placed I think 25 out of 60 overall.
Okay, actually not bad.
No, not bad, but like
top third.
Yeah, but afterwards I like knew I left so much on the table. Like when I looked at like the hits were there. That's not the problems hitting the target, right? But when I looked at the times versus first place versus me, when they got like I'm 12 seconds slower, that's devastating.
Yeah.
And that was like showed me like, okay, your alphas are fine, like you're shooting 10% Charlies, right? That's cool. Now let's figure out how to move faster. Like you need to work on movement.
Yeah. And it probably, I mean, I wasn't there, and I don't think I've even looked at the scores for your match, but like it probably wasn't like 12 seconds on a 90-second stage. It was like they had 12 seconds on you, and they shot it in 21 seconds.
Right.
And then you were like 33.
Right.
And you're like,
what's going on there?
How do they shoot it 2/3 faster than me, right? Like
something's wrong with that timer.
Right.
Yeah, because like I was booking
like
it.
Someone tripped that guy.
Right.
This ain't fair.
Right.
Did you feel a lot of pressure as a cop showing up to a match and thinking like, oh my gosh, like people are looking at me as law enforcement, like I better be able to shoot well, otherwise people are gonna think like, oh my gosh.
Well, a little bit yes, but I think the pressure more came that I owned a training company. And I'm about to represent my training company out there.
Yeah.
I think that was more of it.
Matt Adams from Eagle Tactics, teaching people how to shoot, and he's getting schooled.
Right, 100%. Yep.
That's a huge ego thing.
Yes.
It still is for me.
Right.
Like when I do poorly at a match, and I'm wearing my Gateway Defense T-shirt, I'm like, yeah, good job, buddy. Like way to represent. You know, you just got beat by a freaking B-class shooter.
Demoted.
Well, I don't know B-class, maybe A-class shooter.
But going back to what you said about law enforcement, I believe that's why most law enforcement don't step out of their comfort zone and shoot a match because of that ego thing. Like to me, if I probably didn't own my training company, it would be the law enforcement thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've talked to a lot of LE guys, especially like SWAT guys.
Yeah.
That are like, I was so nervous because everyone's looking at me. They're like, oh my gosh, like you're LE or you're SWAT. And then they watch you shoot and they're like, You know, like it's a huge pressure
Right.
on them, you know. And I get it, I really do. But
And I think what people don't understand is like the community out there is very friendly, especially if you're a new shooter. You know, like, hey, I'm a new shooter, and like, so my last name's Adams. So he thinks always first up on stage one, this guy right here, right? And they're like, is this your first match? I was like, yeah. And they're like, hey, we're gonna bump you back, so you can figure this out.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, man. Hey,
those dudes know, like, your first year match, like, you're just going to be struggling to keep your head above water and not get overwhelmed.
Right.
And, like, they know that, and they're not going to, like...
Right. Especially if you get, you know, put in a group with, like, an M-class shooter.
Yeah.
Or a GM.
Yeah.
And they're good dudes. They'll be like, hey...
They'll coach you.
I'm not going to overwhelm them. I'm just going to say, hey, maybe it's best for you just to run here, shoot these targets, run here, shoot those targets, run there, shoot those targets.
Did your squad have M's and GMs
Yes.
in it? Oh, cool.
Yeah,
so you got to see firsthand,
So I got to see
GM
firsthand
level performance.
what was possible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Not a lot of people get to see that in their first match.
Yeah.
You know, they squad with like B-class people, and they're like, oh, wow, this is crazy. It's like, phew. You know, and we tell people that all the time, like, squad with M's and GMs, because not only will you see that level of performance, but they are the nicest. It's usually the B-class people that are snobs.
Yeah.
Usually.
It's the less you know, the more you think you know, right? And so it's like the loudest person giving advice is usually the least skilled person in the room.
Yeah.
Right? And that's generally the case. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying like I'm super skilled, but I try not to give people any advice whatsoever unless I hear like somebody giving another person like really poor advice.
Right.
I'd be like, not actually. Like, I would disagree with that. Yeah. And they're like, oh, what? You know? And, like, I think it's just helpful for everybody involved to, like, hey, don't send that dude down that path.
Right,
you know? Like,
exactly.
But, I mean, for the most part, like, I'm just there to shoot my match, and, like, you shoot it however you want.
Right.
But for the people who are eager to learn, there's definitely stuff to be learned from the higher level guys. Yeah. And they generally have so much more match experience. And they look at something and they solve the problem in seconds.
Yep.
They're like, oh, I immediately know what I'm going to do. They walk through it. They maybe make a few little tweaks. They're good.
Yep.
Right?
Like,
and they're running the tablet. They're helping people out. They're ready to go.
Yeah, their stage plans, they're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And my first couple of matches, I was like, oh, this is confusing.
Yeah.
Where do I need to go from here?
Yeah.
And then you watch them run, and you're like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah. It's just easier to have them like tell you what to do. Like, hey, just tell me what to, like, tell me how to run this. And if you're a master class or grandmaster in USPSA, you're most likely like somewhat committed to the sport, and so they see someone like you, especially Ellie, and they support that. Yeah, 100%.
They do.
And that's why they love it.
Because this is usually what I get when they find out I'm Ellie or something like this. You couldn't get anybody else to come? Where's the rest of the guys? And I'm like, well, I send out text messages. I ask guys. I say we can squad together, and there's no shows.
Crickets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I think that's a trend probably nationwide.
Yeah, I would say. Well, and the other thing is, like, I can't really blame cops in that, really, because, I mean, number one, like, a lot of people don't think very highly of law enforcement to begin with. In the training world, especially, we generally see cops coming in with very little training or very poor training.
Right, correct.
And so, like, even myself, like, I oftentimes have an assumption, kind of a pre-made assumption, okay, this guy's law enforcement, he said he's been with this department for 4 years, blah, blah, blah. Like, I make an assumption about how much training he has, and usually I'm correct.
Right.
You know? And so, yeah, like, that guy is, like, probably going to struggle quite a bit because, like, he still needs to learn how to grip his pistol. You know, and so that's going to be pretty tough for him shooting like a swinger.
Yep.
You know, like that's going to be pretty tough. But yeah, I think when people realize that you're there to get better, they like massive respect.
Oh yeah, there is.
Yeah,
for sure.
Very cool. Yeah, so I think something else that we could go into is obviously you're shooting matches regularly now, right? So how has that changed your training, for one, like your practice, and then also how has it changed your curriculum and the kind of the stuff that you're teaching for Eagle Tactics?
Yep. So the way it's changed, like, so me, I know I need to work on movement, entry, exits out.
Okay.
So that's why I focus most of my training on myself.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm gonna move in if it's an open target or exit out on an open or a partial target. How I need to handle those. So that's why I base off my training off of now. Also on transitions like designated target stuff like that. Just hey, let's blend these targets together. That's what I've been focusing on a lot. What it's done for my curriculum is saying, all right, how can I relevate this to the law enforcement field, because I train a lot of law enforcement. And bringing that in, like, okay, bill drills for one, right? If we look at most officer-involved shootings, they're around 6 to 8 rounds, 3 to 5 yards, right? Well, it might as well be a bill drill. Right?
Yeah.
So let's figure out how to bring that in, and that's when I started learning about confirmation levels, and that just, all right, now let's show them what confirmation levels are. And whenever you break that down and someone gets the confirmation levels, I feel like you see their way they shoot just completely change.
Let's talk about confirmation levels. So, I think we pretty much agree on the definition, like
Correct.
how we define 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
So, like for me, 1 is shooting like the streak of my red dot or my front sight, somewhere in the A zone. Confirmation 2 is seeing a dot in perpetual motion. It's floating, bouncing, whatever, but I can clearly distinguish it is inside the lines of the A zone. And I know where it's at, and we've switched to reactive shooting, and then confirmation 3 is a still stop dot centered in the available target zone. And within those 3 confirmation levels, or sighting schemes or aiming schemes, pretty much can engage any target, I would say. So obviously confirmation levels are important at matches because the targets are usually pretty crazy. So if you've never shot a match, like you're going to have USPSA targets, the cardboard silhouettes. You're going to have ones that have, half of it painted black, which is like hardcover. So if you hit that, it's a mic, a miss. They do no shoots, the white ones. So obviously that's a penalty. If you hit that, it's -10 automatically. So there's the targets are usually a very diverse mix of risk. Right? So the confirmation levels help you determine how much sightings you need.
Right. Like how much attention I'm going to give to this target.
Exactly. So, that's the foundation of how we aim guns.
Right.
Now, right? But before we did that, we were talking about this at dinner. Like, what do? Like, we push cadence drills and like, go faster, set par times, all these things. And now we just dictate it off the sights.
Right.
So how is understanding like confirmation levels, because I think you kind of picked up on that once you started shooting competition. Largely, right? So how is that changing other types of shooting for you, or how is that changing your training? How is that changing your classes?
On the law enforcement side, what we would see is like, say you have a troubleshooter at 25 yards, whatnot, and they're missing the target. Usually what you would hear from instructors, slow down.
Yeah.
Right? So now they're just going to miss slower.
Yeah.
Because you didn't give them any
They're going to do the exact same thing, but slow.
Instead of saying, hey, are you giving that target the appropriate attention it needs before you pull the trigger to the rear? Right? Instead of give them some information back to help them. And that's changed that part. The way in my own training is like just shooting doubles, learning how to use doubles and how to like be aggressive on certain targets, knowing that, hey, I can shoot confirmation 1 on this, I can shoot confirmation 2 on this. The hardest thing I think for students is they have to understand what kind of varies the confirmation. One of the main things is individual skill set. Like just because I can shoot a target at confirmation 1 doesn't mean you are at that level right now. But they try to, he can do it, I can do it. And that's the same thing I think in matches. Like you see them, hey, just bah, 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 and you're like, oh, I can do that. Then Alpha, Mike, Charlie, Delta, right?
Yeah, exactly. How have you been incorporating confirmation levels to like the movement stuff that you've been working on? Like how like give us some examples of how that plays into things. Whether you're exiting on a target of a certain difficulty, whether you're entering, whether you're shooting something on the move between positions. Like how does that
I guess it would depend on the target, right? If it's an open target at 5 yards that I'm entering, that's going to be confirmation 1. Sure. As soon as I get pop. If I'm Xing out like on a steel plate, like I'm going to make sure it's confirmation 3 because I don't want to start moving out of position, then miss, throw a mic and have to jump right back into that.
We've all seen that.
Yes.
Yeah. I've never seen that.
I personally have never.
I've never done that. I've never done that before myself, but I mean, I have seen it.
I have seen other unskilled people do
Yes.
that.
Yeah. What would you say? What would you say your limit is? Like, if you were to have, if you were to put just an open target, and you were to put at any given distance, what would you say is your level of where's the drop off of level 1 confirmation, level 2 confirmation? Like, I know from me, well, I won't say it.
Like
I'm curious.
Right.
Yeah.
So
like, how many yards?
I would say
how far can you push out?
Confirmation 1, just like shooting like a kind of a predictive double. Like I'm comfortable around 8 to 10 yards. Like go pop on that. Around past that to about, let's say 15 to 17 yards. Like that's gonna be confirmation 2 for me if it's an open. Past that,
and that speed will be different, right? So at 12 yards and 17 yards, still confirmation 2.
Yep.
The split time will actually be different, though.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then after that, it'll be pretty much confirmation 3.
Yeah. Yeah. So for you, it's a little bit different, right? Like I think your confirmation 1 goes past 10 yards.
Yeah, like for me, it's like that 12, 13 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I like. And it depends on the stage, right? Depends on the hit factor, the rules, right? You know what I'm talking about. And it really kind of depends on like what amount of risk I'm willing to take on it. But like I've smashed 15-yard opens, level 1 confirmation, like 15s, 18s, and I'll get like Alpha Charlie.
Right.
And it's not a big deal.
You didn't care because of the stage.
But if it's like a 5 hit factor stage, I'm not doing that, right?
Doesn't matter.
But like Howitzer stage, like I've totally done that before.
Yep.
So it's interesting. But like if we were shooting a stage, let's just say 6 hit, like average stage, 6 hit factor, and you were to see a target at like 13 yards, like how would you approach that? So it would probably be about like a fast level 2.
Yeah.
Like an aggressive level 2.
I think it would be splits around anywhere from a 2.6 to a 3.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
That's very cool.
Love it.
That's very cool. I think that is something like the best way to apply confirmation levels on demand is in a match setting like that.
Yes.
Where you have targets of varying difficulty, you have to exit on targets, you have to enter on targets, you have to shoot targets on the move. Like oftentimes when I shoot targets on the move, I up the level of confirmation depending on how aggressive I'm moving. So it might be a confirmation 1 target, but I'm going to shoot a confirmation 2 because I'm trying to move aggressive.
Yep. Like that 10, 12 yard open target. Like
that's for sure not a confirmation 1.
Right, on the move, right. Like it's
almost confirmation 3 depending on the setup of the target. Like if I have time to go bop, bop, bop as I move, like pretty fast, that might be the way to do it on that stage.
Especially if it's like an awkward like lateral, maybe like uprange movement or something. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. And the fact that like you specifically talked about that, like that was a big thing for you.
Yep.
Something like we've talked about a lot. We've nerded out about it, and I just think it's so cool because when you look at a match, especially like your first match, you look at anywhere between 10 and 12, 15 targets. And you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh.
Right.
How do I shoot all of these? And confirmation levels is the solution.
Yes.
Like it's the solution and it works, right? JJ's attack control, a little bit more simplified version of it, but it's a variation of it. It's in the same vein. It gives you a solution to that complex problem.
Right.
And that's cool to hear from your side of things, like for how much training you've done, especially in the LE space, like to actually hear from you, like the confirmation levels was like a light bulb moment, like, oh my gosh, this makes my life so much easier.
Yeah. So what does it change, or what would it change for your average comp to figure out confirmation levels?
So I think if you get them to explore it on the range, like they'll be very surprised on what they can actually do at shooting. Like a lot of people think they have to shoot confirmation 3 at 10 yards, and they probably don't.
Right.
And once they learn that, because when the way I teach it with law enforcement, I'm like, okay, if you start throwing, like, let's talk about what's causing this, right? And then what confirmation were you trying to shoot at, and what did you actually do? Like, were you giving the target enough attention that it needed? And that goes back to like if it's an officer involved shooting, like we said, like a bill drill, like 3 or 5 yards versus a subject at 20 yards with a car in front of them. Now it's a partial.
Yeah,
right.
Literally.
So now
Yeah,
we better
right.
go confirmation 3.
Right.
Wait, are you comparing USPSA stages to
No, man,
real life?
no,
Whoa.
that
Easy,
to an OIS?
easy there,
no,
killer.
Man, it gets you killed in the streets. You don't want to do that.
Too far.
Right.
Do you feel like that is one of the biggest, or maybe the biggest missing piece to the like shooting comprehension for like law enforcement officers?
I do think so, because a lot of them still shoot, like I would say, cadence based.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what we grew up on. Was like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm gonna give you a rhythm of shooting, versus I want you to shoot what your sights give you.
Yeah. Like I feel like with the cops that I've trained or trained with, generally maybe the less experienced ones, or maybe the ones who are just really ingrained in old habits, like they have 2 speeds.
Yep.
They have like
Ricky
just
Bobby.
the speed of panic, just right? And like when you push them to that speed at 5 yards, like generally their hits are like not terrible.
Right.
Right? Great. You're just holding on to the gun really tight. That's awesome. But then you ask them to pick up the pace a little bit at 20 yards. They go, okay. And they do the exact same same pace. And you're like, whoa, that's not what we meant. Like, I just meant, like, don't sit there and, like, take 4 deep breaths between each shot. That's what I just wanted you to, push it just a little bit. And they're, and so it's like they either have slow fire accuracy, or they have speed of panic.
Right.
And, yeah, I think confirmation 2 is the hardest one to master, personally, because I think it takes a lot of discipline, and it's such a big range of speed for anybody. And probably in a lot of defensive shootings, I think that confirmation 2, being able to do that really well, would pay off.
Yes.
Huge. But the only ones that even remotely have experienced is 1 and 3.
Yep.
Like just Ricky Bobby and like sniping
And
with a pistol.
And that's partially set up because of qualifications.
Okay.
Like, let's talk about just the ones I know. All right.
Mm-hmm.
At 25 yards, you got to fire 6 rounds standing, 6 rounds kneeling, and I'm going to give you 35 seconds. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, they're like,
let that sink in for a second.
Like
35 seconds for 12 rounds.
It's like confirmation 10. Like, they just all day. And some people struggle, like, getting those rounds off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the time standards do not, like, as we go closer, they're still very forgiving.
Yeah.
So they're still shooting confirmation 3 all the way up to about the 7 yards. So when do they explore confirmation 2? Never.
And then they do the final string at 3 yards, or the first string, and they don't see their sights at all.
Right. There's one iteration where you at 7 yards you draw and fire 12 rounds, and it's just
7 yards.
Yeah. Right.
Sounds like my kind of drill. It's like the gateway standards, but with no reload.
Right. 100%.
I like it.
I like that.
Let's change it.
Fantastic.
So that's
draw
like,
fire 12.
That's like confirmation 1
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
Because they're at 7 yards on an FBIQ target, which is big.
The big bottle thing.
Yeah, bottle thing.
Yep.
So you can really open up the throttle on that.
Yeah. So I think something else that is pretty interesting that you and I have talked about quite a bit before is stage planning.
Yep.
So one thing that I hear, Justin, I think this is one of the first things you and I talked about, like back in the day when we started shooting USPSA, but like the tactical guys had such a problem with competition because you know where all the targets are.
Mm-hmm.
You pre-plan your route. You pre-plan your reloads. And like to them, it's like you're not doing anything unknown.
Yep.
So, but we know stage planning is a series of decision making. Talk about that.
So on the law enforcement side, yes, I hear it all the time. And let's just talk about SWAT, because that's the easiest one to talk about. Then we can talk about on patrol base. SWAT. So about, I would say 95% of search warrants, we have what we call an ops plan. a briefing, right? In that briefing, we try to get all the information we want, right? We try to get who's all going to be inside the residence that we're going to hit, their background, are there any guns? We try to get a layout of it, get a blueprint of it. We try to find out which rooms they might be in. To me, what is that? That is stage planning, right? Does it always go the way you want it? No. Same thing like shooting a match.
Yeah, stages never go the way you want.
I mean, they always go the way I want. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but
It must be nice.
yeah, I don't know.
Now, on the patrol side, you get a call, and they give out a street. You're processing through your mind the fastest way to get to that street. Right?
Yep.
You're thinking about, all right, when I get there, what do I need to do? Do I know this person? All right, is there any dangers? Do I need to wait for backup to get there? You're processing everything. That's just stage planning that call.
Yeah. And you're thinking about what is likely to happen. You're thinking about what might happen.
Right.
If what you're going to do if they come out of the house armed or unarmed, right?
Yep.
You're thinking through contingencies.
Yep.
How many times have you shot a stage and you needed to have a contingency and you didn't?
Right.
Because you were so overwhelmed with just trying to remember the targets.
Yep.
And then you miss a target or you overrun a position and then you start shooting stupid.
Yep.
Trying to make up for it.
You forget a reload.
Yep.
You have to do it
Yep.
in a different location.
Yep. And then you go to slide lock and you had one target left. You know? Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yep.
So to me, stage planning is a series of decision making where I'm looking at a problem, I'm coming up with a solution, and it's up to me to execute that.
Yep.
And keep things rolling, even if it messes up. That's been what I have been focusing on for the last several months, is simply executing the plan that I had, and if I mess up, making an emotionless correction in the moment, think on my feet, and keep going.
Right, it's just the same thing as a search warrant, right? You hit the residence, let's say you hit the first door, boom, breach in, and they have something you didn't see. They have a pit bull there, right? You had no intel about a pit bull. You're just going to back out and say, no, we ain't going to do this right now. No, you're going to figure out a way to deal with that, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, same thing on stage planning. You mess up your stage plan, you're not just going to quit, say, all right, I'm done. It didn't work out the way I did, right? You're going to figure out a different alternative.
Right.
It's interesting because the parallels I'm seeing with this too is stage planning, especially like experienced stage planning or a high level of stage planning comes from previous experiences. It comes from doing it however many times. When you're conducting a search warrant or something, like based on however many houses, the layouts of houses, how criminals usually react and all that stuff. That's all based on previous experiences, right? So like you're predicting future actions based on previous experiences. Like that's super interesting.
They go hand in hand in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some more to kind of unpack there, but I think that's a good thing for people to explore. So like if you haven't been exposed to that level of complexity in your shooting, one thing that I think is the biggest problem is in training, and like everybody's training, including like good shooters training right now, is just how easy it is. Like it's not demanding.
Yeah.
It's not mentally demanding at all. And then you go to a match and you fall apart because the stage is mentally demanding. And I'm like, well, what are you doing at home? Well, I don't know. I shoot 4 aces and bill drills, and I do some slow fire marksmanship at 25 yards. It's like, well, how much thought do you have to put into that? Or is that like as you as a decent shooter or a good shooter? Like, are you just able to just, okay, bill drill, bang, 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 right? And like you didn't have to think about it, you didn't have to visualize it, that type of thing. So if you're not making your training complicated, you're only going to see that in a match.
Yep. And I think that's an issue a lot of times we see when people go to the range and train on their own, right? Yeah. They just show up a range with 400 rounds, get there, and like, all right, what am I going to do? Let's work. And they just start like running the same thing over and over again. And not getting, instead of really breaking down, say, all right, where am I lacking? What skill is it? Right now, I'm gonna try to set up a drill that just focuses on that skill. Like if it's movement, if it's your grip, I'm gonna run doubles or whatever it is. You want to focus on. I'm gonna set up drills to work on that skill. and try to get better at that.
Yeah, and matches 100% inform you of what you suck at.
Yes.
Like, you will figure that out right away.
Right.
One thing that's cool that if you shoot USPSA, you must use, in my opinion, is the Practice Score competitor app. When you go in there, you're able to go in and compare yourself to like the match winner or the stage winner, and see what the difference was. And so it'll say, like if Justin wins the stage and then Matt comes in, in 4th place. So it'll have Justin 100%.
Yep.
It'll say, here's how many points Justin shot out of the total. Matt, you shot 85% of what Justin shot. And then the time. Justin shot at 16.62 seconds. You shot it in 17:23, and like you get to go through and see, and like sometimes if they're linked up to the timers, right, you can even track the graph of each split. And so if Justin shot 26 rounds on a 26-round stage, and so did you, you can go, okay, so I can watch his video and I could see that he shot 6 targets, and then he moved, and his movement split was this.
Yep.
And my movement split, okay, he picked up 2 seconds on me on that movement split.
Exactly.
So he, that's where I lost the time. It wasn't my splits. It wasn't my draw. It was that movement section.
Right.
And so if you're filming him shoot that, and then you have him film you,
I know
you watch those videos and you compare it, like there's so much data there.
Or if it's transitions, then I know, hey, I need to go work on transitions. Like he's getting.
You can look at the splits, the little splits.
Yep.
That's 2-0, and then it's like a 3-6 or something, and you're like, oh, you see that little graph. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
Exactly. So great training tools. All of my training is informed by what I can do in a match, and I view a match as purely a shooting problem.
Yep.
It is. I have a certain amount of targets. They need to be shot a certain number of times, and they need to be shot with this level of accuracy standard. And so I look at that as a pure shooting problem. And if I can't solve that appropriately, or I do poorly on that, I have stuff to work on just the shooting side of the house.
Yep.
So with that kind of being in mind, right, why are people confusing shooting and like tactics? Like why are those two things separated? Because like from the way I see it, shooting is shooting in any context. Like if you're shooting at a person because he's shooting at you, you still have to put rounds on target as quickly as possible. Right. I mean, essentially, you have to shoot as many points as possible as quickly as you can. Like, right? So, I mean, why is that such a disconnect for people?
That's a good question. At the end of the day, it's shooting, right?
Yeah.
And any tactic will work when it's not opposed. It has 100% passing ratio. Mm-hmm. But when it's opposed, are you able to shoot? And so that's my thing. Like, the problem I see, I'm trying to make sure I don't word this wrong, is people don't push themselves. Like, CQB is something you need to do, especially if you're in law enforcement or in SWAT, right? But as you enter a room, the last thing on your mind should be, can I hit this target?
Like, am I capable of it?
Right. That should be the last thing on your mind.
Right.
It should just be, hey, there's a partial target, there's an open, whatever. I know what confirmation I need to use on that. I know what splits are going to go on, and I don't even worry about that. I'm going to finish that, and I'm going to move to the next area that I have to clear. And I think people get wrapped around with, oh, well, no, you have to use this footwork and this and this. Like, I don't see that being the issue when y'all are entering the room and firing 8 rounds, and only 2 of them are hitting the target.
Yeah.
Now, where are the other 6 rounds going? Right? And
that's just purely a shooting deficiency.
Right. So I don't understand why we separate those too much. Like, I think they go hand in hand. Like, yes, you have to have good tactics. Military has to have them. Law enforcement does. But sometimes they want to do the fun stuff, right? Because shooting is very stressful if you're not a good shot. And it's very mentally taxing, right? Especially if you're pushing yourself hard. And they don't want to explore that, I feel like. They stay in the comfort zone instead of the exploration zone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I don't really know how we change the perspective on that overall, other than just exposing people to being able to solve shooting problems. And honestly, I think probably one of the best ways is getting guys like yourself and guys like Adrian Allen that we had just had on the podcast, and dudes who have been there, done that, done the law enforcement thing, have done the search warrants. Our buddy Christy Urrutia, right? Like,
Yep.
used to be on a very active SWAT team, and now is a M-class USPSA shooter. Like, getting guys like that to go, respectfully, I've been on both sides, and the shooting part is important, and I wish I was this good at shooting when I did that job.
Right.
Because I think a lot of guys kind of get into this, like, performance shooting afterwards a little bit, and they all go, man, I wish I was, like, I wish I had that when I was, 26 on the job.
All the time.
Yep. You can be very efficient in entering the room, but if you're missing the rounds, or you're very efficient going in there, but it takes you way too long because you're over confirming everything. Like, that efficiency you did going into that room is just lost at that point in time.
That is the gospel we will preach until the end of time, is hardwiring those hard skills to open up bandwidth for your brain to process the information necessary for whatever application you are in at the time.
Right.
Very fancy way of saying that.
And for what it's worth, too, like, I got into shooting because I wanted to, be good with a gun for defensive purposes. Like, I wanted to carry a gun. I want to protect myself. I wanted to be good enough to protect other people, which requires another level of skill, in my opinion. I was just not going to leave that up to, like, the cops' response time, right? And so I was like, well, that's why I'm going to get into guns, and that's why I started shooting USPSA. Was like you, I was seeing like, oh, there's a whole other level of skill that I don't know how to tap into, so I need to go expose myself to these dudes. And at the end of the day, like, I've taken way more defensive and tactical style classes than I have performance shooting classes. But the stuff that I can go home and work on is the shooting stuff. Like, I don't have teams to clear rooms with, and like, that's not my job. Likelihood of needing to have to do that, pretty slim. One of the best classes I ever took was from Craig Douglas, ECQC. Craig Douglas of ShivWorks. Fantastic. It's grappling with a gun, so it's fighting in the clinch, which is 0 to 5 feet.
Right.
A gunfight inside of 0 to 5 feet, which is insane, because you're grappling,
Don't
you're
y'all do that
striking.
inside the car too, or?
Yeah, it's jiu-jitsu, and then it's knives and guns. Like, insane, right? That was a super eye-opening experience for me, and what I saw there was like I was the best shooter in the class, pretty easily, but I definitely did not perform the best. Like, I was very middle to low in the pack as far as just my performance overall that weekend. It was literally because I had other deficiencies. So I think that stuff is super important, and you need to be training, like you were saying. Like, yes, do that. Like, if you're a new cop, like, go take that high-risk vehicle stop class. Go take that CQB class. Go take that low-light class. Like, figure out how to use your stuff. Figure out how to do your job. But then, like, also go figure out how to run the gun that you carry around on your hip all day.
And I think that comes in from, like, bringing instructors, no matter what their background is, because it used to be that, hey, they need to have an LE background, military, like, hey, they need to be tier 1, whatever. No, I don't think that's the case, right? I know people like yourself with no law enforcement background, no military background, that just run the shit out of the gun, right? Right, and know how to teach it. So to bring that practical performance style shooting into law enforcement, right? And that's kind of like, I started to drift to like into hit factor when I teach. And then trying to relate that to the law enforcement side, like why it goes
so go into that. So how are you doing that?
So the way I look at it is, so Alpha's 5 points, Charlie's 3 points, Delta's 1 point. So Delta's pretty much a mic, like, right?
Yep.
Right. So what I do is, after we shoot a drill, let's just say we do build drills at 7:15, 25 yards, right?
Okay.
All right, cool. I'm going to tell them, hey, shoot out whatever appropriate confirmation level you need. Then I'll get back there, we'll score everything via hit factor, right? And what I'll do is I'll take the target and I'll bend it to where it just shows Charlies and Alphas, right? I bend the Deltas in. And I'll say, hey, if I was to put this up to any of y'all's bodies, right, it would probably much, your body would be a hit, right? So that's why Charlies are good at sometimes. alphas are good, but delta's pretty much a mic. Then I break it down to this, a bill drill. So if me and another person lined up 7 yards away, at the beat, we are going to draw, and we're going to do a bill drill on each other. Say he runs it in a 2.5, but gets all alphas, like, poof, perfect, like, boom. But I run it in a 1.75, 4 alphas, 2 Charlies. Which one would you want to have in a gunfight?
Yeah, the 2 Charlies, the faster one.
Right. Which one wins in hit factor?
175 with 2 Charlies.
Yeah. So to me, they go hand in hand, right? Speed and accuracy is what you got to have to win the gunfight.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty hard to argue with. What have you seen? How has like hit factor been received?
So once they kind of understand it, like at first it's kind of like, hold up, I'm trying to figure out. We can, you say,
wait,
hey,
math. Yeah,
right, right. We're trying to say how many points you can get per second, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's confusing. I'm like, it's okay. They got an app, right? That's hard for us, man. I get it. I use the app, so. So once they kind of figure it out and they start to run it at different levels, at different drills and stuff like that, and start to figure out, they're like, oh, now I start to see how bad the delta hurts me, or how this time and this movement is hurting me. Mm-hmm. And they start to blend that together. They're really receptive to it because I've had several people like, hey, can you go over the scoring again? What's that app you use? Stuff like that. And they really start to break it down. Because I used to, when I first started, I had, those targets. I had targets even made, like, of the human anatomy, right? And I did have, like, a USPSA behind it, but it was too much going on with it, right? So I just transitioned to USPSA targets. And I like those also because, like, you really have to focus on the spot, like in the area, right? Because if you look at the whole brown, your round will hit all brown, like all over the place.
It's a visual challenge for sure. You wouldn't think it would be just like a blank slate, but to find a spot to lock your eyes into on something that is kind of a big brown blob at 20 yards, like
especially this morning with the low lighting conditions.
Yeah, we were shooting at a range this morning that was like an indoor range, but it didn't have overhead lights; it just had skylights. And it was a little dark. It was a little dark. I almost turned on my weapon mounted light.
Some guys were like pulling out their handhelds. And right. I don't know about this.
Yeah.
I'm like, how'd you do? Is that all alphas then? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So when it comes to hit factor scoring, right? Like we're obviously big fans of hit factor scoring because of that sliding scale of speed and accuracy, right? Do you find that like in law enforcement there's a trend of like you cannot miss because there's a lawsuit attached to every bullet?
So I would say yes and no to that. That's usually said, but when you see them shoot, they're not doing what is said, if that makes sense.
So they're saying it, but they're actually not doing it.
Right, because I could say that and say, cool guys, we're about to run a bill drill at 7 yards. Fastest time with all alphas wins a prize. What do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to think about every round that's acceptable? Or are they just going blah, 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 right? So, yeah, I hear that all the time, and I 100% get it, but what is that doing? Like, in training, we should be exploring.
Yeah.
Right? And now you're saying, hey, you can't explore in training. I don't want you to figure out what distances you can shoot fast at. I just want you to shoot confirmation 3 on everything. Like,
that's so detrimental.
Right. Let them explore
literally
there.
Never get better.
They'll feel more comfortable if that ever happens.
Yeah.
That's something we've talked to Sean Griffith about. Sean Griffith, like national level GM, LE, and he said that, for the longest time he was a turtle, and that getting himself to shoot faster and be okay with misses.
Right.
And by misses, I mean like Charlies and Deltas, not like actually mics. Like mics are not great. But, like, being able to, once again, using the hit factor scoring, being able to allow yourself to miss in the name of exploration, right?
100%.
Like, that's super important for training.
Yep. So one of the drills we do doubles, like predictive doubles. And we do at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 yards, right? So when I demo it on the shot timer. And whatever split I get at 5 yards, I say, guys, I'm going to try to hold myself accountable to carry these splits all the way back to 25 yards. Like, I might lose 1/100th of a tenth here or there, right? But I'm going to try to hold myself accountable. And then I'm going to look at the target and see what trends it has going with it, right? And to figure out what's going on. But I'm exploring the whole time. The hardest part is to get them to keep the same splits, because they naturally want to slow down, because law enforcement naturally wants to have a group like this because it's impressive, but it's not impressive, right?
Yeah.
And you can't walk down the whole line with a shot timer, each individual shooter, because that would take up the whole class. So you have to trust them and keep saying, hey, y'all, please explore this.
Yeah.
And once they do, they're like, holy crap, I got it. That wasn't that bad. Like,
yeah. The scoring blows wide open when you do start exploring.
right.
But if you never explore what's possible, and you never explore or ever experience a proper balance or a good balance of speed and accuracy, then it honestly kind of sounds like, I don't know, like it's not that attractive.
Right.
Right? You have to experience it at some point.
Right.
Again, matches, that's exactly what you experience every single time.
If you don't want to explore, just be a B8 shooter, right? Go to the line, shoot your B8s with a minute or however long it is, right? And go about your life.
At everyone, you know who you are. Right?
Monsters. Because that's the thing, right? Like, going back to confirmation levels, like, being able to shoot a fist-sized group at 10 yards or a 2-inch group at 7 yards, it's a very important thing to be able to do.
Right.
Like, you should be able to do that. But if all of 99.999% of your training is that, you will not grow.
Right.
You will not grow as a shooter.
Right.
Today was a good example of that. So as we're filming this, we just finished day 1 of our performance pistol class down here in Georgia. Day 2 is tomorrow. Day 1 is all pretty much static stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's exploring grip, sights, trigger, confirmation levels, and we kind of get into a little bit of target transitions and a little bit of movement, just kind of scratching the surface. And tomorrow is all transitions and movement, right? But today, so I thought it was very interesting today. So we had the 3-inch white circles in the head box, and I was asking people to shoot groups. So one of the 3 drills we did at the beginning that's scored. All that was shooting a 5-round group into that 3-inch circle.
No time limit.
No time limit. Immediately, people are using the whole pacer, right? Some people were dropping them out.
Right.
Some people were 1 shot here, 1 shot here, 1 shot here, 1 shot here. And I was like, whoa, okay. So, like, you had no time limit. All I wanted you to do was shoot straight. And then we started working on some stuff. We started working on grip. We started working on trigger control at speed. Like, if I hold the gun still and smash the trigger, like, can we be accurate? And so, like, all we had people do was focus on holding the gun still, and their accuracy improved without even talking about sights and confirmation level or trigger.
Yeah.
None of that. Only grip.
Right.
Right? And the groups shrunk dramatically. I was like, whoa. Right? And it didn't... The thing is, like, we didn't teach anyone today how to tighten up their group. Like, we didn't talk about marksmanship.
Right.
We didn't talk about, center the dot, call the shot, prep to the wall, squeeze, let the shot surprise you. None of that. Like, it was like, hold the gun really, 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 really still.
And they were already self-coaching themselves
Right.
to figure out how to do that.
Right.
Every single person just drilled the center out. And we said, all right, cool, let's move on. You already understand confirmation level 3. And, like, we'll get into some trigger work later. But that was done. Because it was literally just showing someone how to explore some technique stuff,
Right.
and immediately see results, and going, great, you
Right.
saw it, you recognize it, you know what it looks like, you know what it feels like, let's move on, let's work on something else.
And you can tell a lot of these guys had never done that before.
Right. Oh,
Which is also really interesting.
yeah. Maybe only 3 or 4 of the guys tops at the class, like including yourself, had messed around with trigger control at speed before, and they're like, how many of you guys are surprised that you could slap the trigger and still...
Right.
Well, oh, yeah, me. Like, that was crazy. And so then, of course, we do dive into, grip size and trigger in a ton of depth. But that, to me, was just a perfect example of...
Just explore.
Let you off the leash, explore a little bit, see what you can do, weigh the results. Like, that's what training is.
Right.
And, I mean, honestly, trigger control at speed, that type of stuff, got that from competition. Like, 3-yard target. I can smack the trigger. Do I need to prep the trigger? No. 20-yard piece of steel. Do I need to prep the trigger? Yes. Do I have to hold the gun about the same amount of stillness, though, to do a 13 split here and to go 1-for-1 on steel at 20 yards? It's like, pretty much, right? Yeah, so it's informing our training that way.
And that's the thing. You just explore it and let them explore it. And that's what's kind of lacking in the law enforcement training right now.
Because they're not allowed.
They're not allowed, right? I'm gonna give you this stuff, and I'm gonna say, hey, I need this. Instead of just saying, hey, y'all, I want you to explore and see what happens. I don't care about 1 or 2 flyers, right? I don't care about that, right? We're gonna just look at the general trend that's going on here, right? Because when you're exploring, you're going to throw rounds. Like that's the whole point. I want you to fail right here, so you don't fail out there.
And that's something. It's a mindset shift too, right? Like
Yes.
it's a perspective shift because even today, like even Dennis, I could tell like, you know, like you throw one Charlie, it's like, oh man, fail, and I'm like, dude, it's not a fail. Like, did you know exactly why you did that? And was it in the name of exploration? Because if it was, that is a win, my brother.
Right. Yep.
But now, you know, like you're shooting, Billy Joel standards or something. You throw a Charlie, like, yeah, it's not so good. But you're not doing a test all the time. You should be training and then testing. Training, testing.
Right.
Matches, right? We look at matches as very much of a test. A test of how is your training working? Okay, you do the test. Okay, how did you do at that test? What did you suck at? All right, go work on those things in training again. Rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah. You're doing a bunch of training on entries and exits. Like, where are you going to actually determine whether you're getting better at those or not? Like you're going to do it in a match setting.
Yep, that's
under
what
pressure.
I'll figure out. Yep.
Because
Compared to
you can do it. You can see what are my, how stable are my sights, how quickly am I getting the gun up on target.
Exactly.
And I can put it on a timer and go, yeah, my movement split was 2 seconds, and last week it was 2:20.
Right.
And so I shaved off a quarter of a second. Great.
But I'm comparing that against myself.
Yeah.
Not against a group of my peers.
Correct. And so then you go and you shoot against Justin.
Right.
And he's still got half a second on you. You're like,
well, I guess I got to go back.
okay, like now I have to figure something else out, right?
Like, what is he doing to get that half a second? Let's try to figure that out.
Right, because I just worked for a week and a half on shaving a quarter second off, and he's still got a half a second on me.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, it gives you something to work on. If you're competitive, or if you care about getting good, you will take every opportunity to go essentially put yourself in the ring with elite level shooters and let that inform your training. It's literally a free masterclass.
Yep.
With, at any given local club, you can shoot with a GM who is top percentage of shooters in the world.
Yep.
Yep.
Like, it's an absolutely insane their level compared to everybody who shoots.
Yep. And usually, like, when you do go shoot a match, you'll find other like-minded individuals, and you might have a common background, and next thing you know, you're out training together, working together to get better.
That's how Justin and I met.
See?
Yep.
We met on Instagram, and then I moved up to Wisconsin, and we started shooting matches together, and now, like, I don't really go to the range by myself anymore. We pretty much go together, and we train together and push each other. I know exactly where he's at. Right. He knows exactly where I'm at, and we can debrief.
Right.
We can coach each other, and we can be honest and push each other and be like,
yeah,
that ain't it.
Right, exactly. Because he'll see the stuff that you can't see.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%.
All right, so let's talk about equipment a little bit and guns. So something I've seen a lot with Ellie is like looking at gamer belts.
Yep.
And be like, wow, it's a gamer belt.
Total magnet.
Oh my gosh, it is red. Red is not camouflage.
It's true. It's
not basket weave.
Right. It's not black multicam.
And they may look at that and think there's no practical value to that. Doesn't apply to me. I would never do that. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm completely fine with that. You can come in your duty gear and come shoot a match. And I kind of recommend that for the first person if you're going to come for your first match, right? Don't spend all this money for something you might not ever use. You could come and be like, hey, this ain't for me. I'm not doing this. Come in your duty gear, shoot it a couple matches, and you can start to figure out, oh, okay, this might not be the best setup for what this is doing. Kind of like, let's talk about law enforcement, plate carrier, stuff like that. We fit a plate carrier for the mission we're going on, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. Like you're changing your belt for what you're doing.
Yeah.
In shooting competitions.
Yeah. Like your patrol vest.
Right.
Like generally, like most of the guys don't have a bunch of AR mags. Like you're not carrying 6 AR mags on that thing.
It's not practical.
Like you've got your taser, your light,
right.
Some Glock mags or whatever, and then like the SWAT call out team, they're running in with rifles. Like they're gonna have a little bit of a different setup, right?
Right. So I'm like, okay, it's the same thing. Y'all just overthink this way too much.
What is it about a gamer belt or competition belt that is more convenient or better or whatever than like your duty belt?
This, for one, the simplicity of it, just like, hey, mag carriers and a holster versus all this other gear that I don't need.
There you go.
To the holster, and people get wrapped around, well, that doesn't have retention. I'm like, okay.
Wouldn't it be nice to arrest an RO every once in a while, though? That was a total BS call. Come here, you are under arrest.
I did not pass the 180. I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, you could, if I gave you this holster setup, would it change your draw speed? Probably not, because you're not efficient in your holster draw already. So that setup doesn't matter what you're using. And I think people think just because you have a no retention holster that you're guaranteed going to be faster on the holster draw, which really doesn't matter in competition shooting.
Well, what about consistency? Like, I mean, if you carry a level 3 holster on the job and then you're shooting like a real slick, race rig, low cut deal, like, aren't you ingraining bad habits?
I don't see that.
Why not?
Because you have to train with both. Like, if you're not doing dry fire with a level 3 holster, you're going to suck at it. If you're not doing dry fire with a slick holster, you're going to suck at it. So if you're not putting in the reps, either way, you're going to suck.
That's the truth right there. That was free.
Okay. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you next time.
I have a huge issue with it. So I see this on the civilian side a lot. Like the AIWB snobs. Okay? Now, I'm friends with some of you, all right? So, I mean, I'm not coming at you, but like kind of. But like if you were like, no, civilians conceal carry, so you shoot always from concealed carry. I'm like, no. Like, I'm going to go shoot, like, our buddy Donovan Moore, good friends with him. He shot Eric Raffell's class. We shot, like, over 1,000 rounds in 2 days. And he is shooting AIWB. And he is literally jamming his back pockets full of mags. And I go 1 in the gun, 2 on my magnet, 4 on my belt, 2 in my back pocket. And I literally have, like, 8 mags on me. With 23 rounds each.
Like 300.
And he he could fit 1 in the gun, 1 in his mag pouch, 1 in a neo mag, and then like 2 in his back pocket. And he's already down 3 mags, And I was like, oh man, that it just looked inconvenient. And it's his decision to do that, right? And if you're gonna shoot AIDBB and you want to do that, and that's your thing,
and he doesn't complain about it,
right?
What
That's
the
thing. He does not, and that's why he doesn't bother me.
Right, you made that decision. Don't complain about it.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, but if you're going to carry concealed, like, don't tell me that you can't then put on an OWB rig and go, hey, I'm wearing a different rig. I'm going to draw differently. Today, I shot a class for the first time in a very long time out of my ALS Safariland, duty style rig. And Justin and I were talking about it. Like, was my draw that much worse? Not really. Maybe a tenth, maybe 15 hundredths of a second. Worse than, my kind of average time with my slick holster, but I don't think it affected the class. I don't think it affected my performance much. Didn't affect my demos. Like, it's just, I realized, hey, I've got retention on this. I got to make sure I remember to hit that button and get my hand position in that spot, prioritize that. I don't know, man. Like,
that goes to, like, your standard and my standard, right? It doesn't change with the setup, right?
Talk about that.
Right. So I don't care if you're wearing a level 3, a level 2, a level 1, OWB. I don't care if it's dark outside and you got a flashlight. The time standard stayed the same.
You are cruel. I'm never shooting your standards.
I get it. Right, and I believe yours is the exact same way, right?
It is.
You picked the equipment you came for this course. You know we're going to shoot this standard at one time.
Every course you probably get somebody who asks you if there's a time time handicap, right?
I say no.
Exactly. Exactly.
And when they get upset, I tell them, create your own training company, come up with your own standard, make your own rules.
Love it.
It's super easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't require any work or headache at all.
Or ammo. Yeah. You don't shoot any ammo when data testing your own standards.
It's very cheap also for starting.
100%. It's almost free.
It is. Really, you just make money immediately. Yeah. Yeah. I think it is like civilians, law enforcement, military. It's honestly, it's an excuse.
Right. Because my job in law enforcement, I won't go too much into it. I carry concealed for what I do.
Yeah.
So I have to be proficient in that. But they could tell me, say, hey, Matt, I need you in this position. You got to put in a duty belt. Cool.
So then you're in uniform.
Right.
And you're
Gotta be
running
positioned
completely
I could be
different.
shooting a match the next day. I better know how to do it. Teaching a course for law enforcement. I usually run the LS system. So you just got to put in the reps.
So you got like 4 different systems that
Right.
you use regularly.
Yep.
Understand what you're wearing. Be good at it. Good at it.
Be a professional. Adapt to the equipment you have. Like, we all know, like, it doesn't take that much of dry fire to, like, get good.
No.
Like, come on.
If you're doing it right, like 10 or 15 minutes, you should be like spinning.
Yeah. Like, I mean, so I was telling you about this. I have yet to shoot a match from concealment. And I never shoot from concealment, like, ever. And honestly, like, I probably should more.
But I was telling you, I was like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and then I was like, yeah, maybe it probably doesn't, but I probably should. So then we went down. We trained with Donovan down at Alpha, and I was like,
We
you know,
just shot stages. Right?
yeah, all we did was shot like super difficult stages. I shot my 5-inch from concealment. I was like, okay, I don't have to do that for another 12 months.
Right. Like, it doesn't matter. Like,
you were beating me on stages, and I was running my carry optics rig.
I truly did not feel like it hindered me.
I'm pretty fast out of that rig too. And
look
like,
at Dixon.
Yeah. That dude is a beast. Shout out to Brandon Dixon. That dude is a beast. But guess what he just did?
OWB.
He just put together an OWB belt, and he's
guess what? Still a beast, right?
Ripping out of that thing.
Donovan's building out an OWB rig next year, and watch
Is
out.
that public knowledge? I know.
We'll edit that. Just go beep.
Donovan is.
I'll send this to him, and I'll be like, do I need to bleep this out?
Yeah. But yeah, you make the switch, and you're up to speed so fast if you know how to practice. So yeah, I think that I almost see that as a non-issue, but I do understand why people bring it up. But I honestly think
it's just a cop out. Yeah, 100%.
Yep. It's like, well, my gear, and then that's gonna get him out of it. I'm like, nah, bro.
Well, the way my bank account's set up, I got to check in and savings. Right.
Yeah, do not deposit money into I have 3 different accounts. It needs to go in this.
Excuse.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we talked about gear. I think that's a valid thing to bring up. Let's talk about, and this could get a little spicy, but I don't mind. Bless you.
Sorry.
Let's talk about the training industry and kind of what's going on. So trends in the training industry. So I have not been in the training industry for all that long. You have been in it probably almost double the amount of time as me, and then we both have mutual friends who've double, triple what we've done, right? 10, 15 years, even more for some people. Training industry, like this, right? We're talking about this. Now we're talking about this. Now we're back to here, right? And
trends just
it's either a wave or maybe a circle. I don't know, right? But it's everything that goes around comes around, and something that was popular before is totally out of favor, and now it's back in favor. And I'm not just talking about like gear, right? Because that also is the exact same way, but the way people are training. So Justin and I on our website, we say, gateway defense, pushing the limits of performance shooting. Like that's just like our little motto or whatever. Like super cute.
Made it up in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, 1 second. So performance shooting, but that's our thing, right? And we say we're performance shooters and we teach performance shooting classes, even though we do have like a very defensive concealed carry class. But performance shooting for the most part, like for us, it just means like pushing the actual shooting part of it over everything else, and that's what we feel like we have some subject matter expertise in, is figuring out how to get fast and accurate and balance it. Right. So that, I think, is a definition that not everybody uses for performance shooting, and it's almost kind of becoming a buzzword now, where it's like, I teach a performance pistol class or performance rifle class. Yeah. And it's like, well, what are you doing? Right. And I go there and it's mechanics only.
Right. I'm going to show you how to reload, like 1 hour run.
Right. Or like we're going to zero, and then we're going to shoot from alternate positions, and nothing's on the clock. We're just going to shoot steel targets. We shoot the same drill over and over for 8 hours.
Right.
I mean, that's not performance shooting. So what are we kind of seeing with that? Because I feel like your courses, from talking to you, have changed quite a bit.
Yep.
Like they've really taken a shift. Like if someone trained with Matt in 2019,
oh yeah, it'd be totally different.
And someone trained with Matt this year, they'd be like, this is not even the same guy.
Yep.
Also, you look different. But as far as the training goes itself, like it's completely different.
Yes.
So how is like what are you seeing in that space as far as like the instructors, what they're pushing, how they're trying to incorporate stuff? Are they shooting matches? Do you need to be shooting matches to call yourself a performance shooter? Like,
I think you ought to be shooting matches if you're gonna call yourself a performance shooter. Like, how are you exploring the performance side of it? Like, what are you doing to like test yourself? If it's just running standards, well, I don't feel like that's a test in my mind. Standards are good. Don't get me wrong about that. Okay, we all have standards. But I feel like the matches where you go against unknown people is where you actually push yourself. Mm-hmm. All right. And once you start to explore that and figure out how you should be shooting these certain stages or how these movements and like what's the performance I'm getting out of that, then you start to write drills and skills for that part and start to incorporate that in like a performance style shooting class.
Standards are rote memorization for the most part.
Yeah.
It's just repetition.
Yep.
I equate it to like Steel Challenge, which Steel Challenge is actually pretty fun, but you shoot. I believe there's like 8 stages or 10 stages of those, and you generally shoot like all those steel matches I've shot a handful. Generally, I think we shot maybe 5 stages at any given Steel Challenge match, and you shoot each stage 5 times in a row. So it's 5 shots, ding, 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 reholster, beep, ding, 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 reholster, beep, ding, ding. And you literally do it 5 times in a row. They throw out your lowest score, and they count the top 4, and then you move on, and you do the next stage, and it's very similar. It's run the same way. So like you can get very, very, very good at that. I mean, they're some of the best shooters in the world. USPSA, IPSC also are world champions in Steel Challenge. So I'm not like just dogging on it. But it's a completely different kind of shooting than the problem solving that we were talking about earlier, right? Where looking at a problem, finding a solution, applying that solution.
Right.
You know, I think it's completely different. And so I almost look at standards the same way as like a Steel Challenge match.
Yep. So like in our performance class, I believe you're going to do this tomorrow. Like at the end of the class, we just set up a USB stage.
Yeah.
And we run the stage.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're going to test everything we just learned.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing something like that at the end, or how are you even like showing the students like, hey, I'm going to give you a baseline of your performance. Like, how are you scoring that? Are you scoring hit factor? Or are you just scoring it like, hey, threat, draw your weapon, shoot 5, hey, that was a great job, it looked fast. Like, how are you doing that?
All right.
Yeah, I think if you shoot something enough times, you are going to be dang good at it regardless of your skill level. I mean, how many times have we seen someone shoot a sub 2 second bill drill and is still like a C-class shooter? Like, I think a sub 2 second bill drill is fantastic. And if you can shoot a sub 2 second bill drill, like, consistently, you are a good shooter. But then you go to a match and, like, dumpster fire, right?
I can do sub 1.3s and I'm not a GM. Sad.
That is very sad.
Yeah, what are you doing with your life?
It's because being a GM has literally zero to do with being able to shoot bill drills very well. It has everything to do with being able to
do not tell the internet that.
Too late. Just did. We'll have to delete that part. Yeah, probably.
But that's where, like, especially if you're going to call yourself a performance shooting instructor and you don't shoot matches and you're not willing to test yourself against something that you don't know. Like it's a completely new and different test you've never seen before. Like that is the ultimate test of your skill and your understanding of like your skills and how to apply them in a complex environment like that. Versus shooting your own standards in your own class or in your own training on your own time all the time, right?
Yep. And you don't have to be the best USPSA shooter, right? Right. Like,
like me.
Yeah, like Matt. He sucks. Right? Yep. Just kidding. Like I am not competitive at area matches. Like I was like not even remotely close to being competitive at Carry Optics Nationals, right? But what I am doing is I'm giving myself the experience, and I am still testing myself and giving myself stuff to work on continuously. And that's where I think the difference is. So you don't have to be like, well, I'm in, I'm going to be a contender for, Area 5, championship this year, or, I'm going to be top 20 in carry optics nats. Like, no, no way. Like, there's no way I'm going to do any of those things. But what it's doing is it's informing my training, and it's an actual, like, difficult test. Like, that's a test of tests. Tests is carry optics nationals, in my opinion, for shooting. The hardest match I ever shot, by far, like 30 stages. So I think you have to just be going out and exposing yourself to that so that you know what to practice, how to practice, and then how to teach other people how to practice. And that's pretty much it.
Yep.
And like, yeah, would it be great to be a higher level competitor? Of course. And like, we'll work towards that. But I don't think you have to be like at a certain level or a certain classification.
No, I don't.
You just have to be pushing yourself.
Right. I agree with that. I don't feel like you have to be a GM to be teaching performance.
I think a big thing too about it is the competitive scene are always in front of the curve when it comes to like modern day training techniques. And if you are an instructor that is not like in or at least familiar with the competition scene and you shoot matches and you're watching what GMs are doing nowadays, you're going to be a step behind.
Sure.
Most of the time, right? Which is why we see some of these like performance shooting instructors that are still teaching like cadence. And it's like, yeah, that's not a thing anymore, bro.
Yeah.
Like
I'll shout the guys out, right? How much did we talk about confirmation levels today, right? Different kinds of sighting schemes. I mean, I directly heard that from the whole PSTG crew. Ben Stager, Mason Lane, Rob Epifania, Joel Park, Hwансik Kim. Like, those are the guys that I heard them talking about it, and I heard them talk about it a bunch, and then dudes that I respected went and trained with them, and then those dudes explained it to me, and it finally clicked with me, and I was like, whoa, like, this is incredible.
It's like the first time you hear it, you're like, I'm confused on it.
Yeah.
But once it clicks, it's like, oh, shit.
Right, exactly. So, like, I look at something like that, I give credit where credit's due. Like, Ben Stager, Mason Lane, Hwансik Kim, they are national and world level competitors. We're learning that type of stuff from them. 3-step entries. I mean, how many people know what a 3-step entry is now? Or that drop steps are bad?
Right.
Or, like, who do you think of? JJ Rakaza,
Yep.
right? Like, that's the guy you think of because he has taught a bunch of people that and has made a huge impact. But I would never have known that drop steps are bad. I never would have known how to do a 3-step entry if I had never been plugged into the competition shooting world.
Right.
And if I never shot a match again, I would continue to do 3-step entries. I would continue to apply leaning exits when applicable, right? I would continue to try to eliminate drop steps as often as I can for whatever shooting context I'm doing when movement efficiency is important.
Right.
And so, like, again, if you're not shooting matches, you're going to benefit a lot from training with JJ, one of the best classes I've ever taken. You're going to benefit a lot from training with Eric Raffel, Ben Stager, Tim Herron, all these guys, right?
And to your credit, like you've heard some of those things from like some of your like previous mentors who learned it from them, and you learned some of those techniques or some of those principles like initially, but then you were like, I need to hear this from the horse's mouth. Like I need to hear JJ teach this to me because like having the middleman isn't enough for me anymore. And as like an instructor, you hold yourself to a higher standard, which I think is really, really cool.
Yep.
Like it's really important.
Yeah. I mean, that literal thing happened. Like, I learned 3-step entries from somebody who trained under JJ, and like, it was great. It changed my life. And then I went and, like 2 or 3 years later, I trained with JJ himself, and he fixed my 3-step entry.
Right.
And I was like, oh, thank you, because I had this one issue where it was like I carry over too much weight into my leading leg. And I was like, oh, this whole problem. He helped me diagnose that right then and there, because that's literally his thing.
Yep.
And 3-step entries were something I'd worked on for years. So, yeah, expose yourself to those guys. Expose yourself to guys who are exposing themselves to matches and pressure. Get as immersed as possible, I think. And like, only good can come from that.
Yep.
If you have an open mind.
Yep.
Yeah. And like I get it, you get busy, you have a training schedule, you're busy with the family, but like you cannot tell me you do not have time for 1 or 2 matches throughout the entire year.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
You cannot tell me that.
Yep.
Yeah. Even what you were saying about like a potential like shooting schedule, like 8 matches in a major or something, right? For some project you guys are working on, it's like 8 matches in a major. That's really not bad.
No.
You could knock out all those locals in the summer, and then hit one major a year, you're going to be gone for a weekend.
Right.
Sometimes you can just get the major done in one day. Sometimes you can do it on a Friday. Like, it's crazy. So it doesn't take much.
I think I've shot 12 matches in 9 months.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Just because I, like, want to learn from it. Like,
yeah.
Because each time I go and shoot one, I learn more. I'm like,
I shot a match a month for a long time.
Right.
And I felt like that was plenty.
Yeah, well, a match a month is enough. Like, I mean, if that's all you can do.
If you're supplementing it with a bunch of training as well.
If you're taking that match, getting like you're having someone videotape your stage runs, right? You're analyze that and go into the range and figuring out what's going on with that. Yeah, that's perfect.
I would argue that's even a better strategy than shooting 3-4 matches a month and not training.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Because you're just going to go to the match and shoot the same style like you've been doing. Mm-hmm.
It's the C-class lifers.
Right. Yeah. It's the same outcome.
The good old boys.
Yeah. They're just there to have fun. They don't care about getting better. Yeah. And that's fine, but that's not me. Drives me crazy. Cool. Well, I think this has been a good discussion.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been fun hanging out, and we're going to do a bunch of shooting tomorrow, which is, I'm very excited.
Yeah,
day 2 is way better than day 1.
So much more fun.
Yeah, day 1 was good. I enjoyed it.
Well, that's good. That's good. So before we go, I want to take the opportunity to talk about our collab class. Yep. Okay, just for the internet. So we got one coming up here in Ohio in April. We've got one coming up in June in Utah, Ophir, Utah, right? So let's talk about our class and what we're kind of going to do as a collab sort of deal.
So performance red dot. So day 1 would be me, and you'll pretty much get. So me and Brendan agree on a lot of the same things. He's taking my class, and now I'm taking his class, and like day 1 of his class pretty much merges with day 1 of my red dot class. Yeah. So I'll have
a few maybe stylistic differences,
right?
But
nothing too major. We're still getting the same concept, the same skills out there, and using a lot of the same drills to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Right. So day 1's with me, then day 2 you take over from there. What's your plan? Like, go into what you're going to do for day 2.
Yeah. So day 2 is assuming that we've kind of built a foundation on day 1, and we're shooting the gun straight, and we're applying proper confirmation levels to targets of varying difficulty. If we're doing that,
which will all be covered in day 1,
which we're hammering on day 1, right? So day 2 then is apply those skills like grip the gun and manage your sights appropriately. But now we're going to do like I say advanced target transitions because for lack of a better term, but we get like really in depth with target transitions. Target transitions to targets of varying size at the same distance, targets in depth. We kind of explore the idea of like attack control, which is another variation of confirmation levels. Attack control I learned directly from JJ, and I give him credit. I'm like, hey, this changed a lot for me. Yep. It's a super useful training tool. I want to share that with you guys, right? And he's cool with that, which is awesome. So we get into some of that. We get into movement, right? We get into like lateral movement. We get into movement in depth. We get into shooting on the move in various configurations. But then we combine stuff. So it's going to be shoot on the move hard, shoot static, shoot on the move hard, shoot static. And we're getting people to start throttling and modulating their movement speed. Once we start adding in movement stuff, then it's like, how does that change confirmation levels? Yep. We start moving into that. Essentially teaching you how to do all the stuff you see like high-level guys being able to do. It's like, how do they do that so smooth and shoot that 4 seconds faster than me? Like, that's what we explore. And so we get tons of reps, tons of one-on-one reps. It's a good time.
Yeah.
It's a good time. And we culminate in shooting some stages. So generally, depending on the time, we do like at least 2 stages, right? We generally do like some mini stages and then like one big stage, right? And we actually let you shoot it through one time without any coaching. You just shoot it through. And then we walk through it with everybody and kind of talk about ways we can improve. And then we might change up the start position or something like that, right? But we talk through all the principles. So we change the stage a little bit, and then we're just going to shoot it again, right? So now we're going to shoot a slightly different stage, maybe a different start position. And you have an opportunity to kind of take the coaching and apply it right there and kind of see what you can do. Yeah, and we, same setup. And so when you see that target, you're still going to be able to kind of attack it the same way. I think it's super fun.
Oh yeah,
I think it's going to be like really cool to do together. So I'm looking forward to that. So check out all of our joint classes are listed on Matt's website, which is eagle-tactics.com. Eagle-tactics.com. We'll leave all that stuff in the show notes as always. Matt, obviously your website is a good place to find you, find information about what you're doing, the classes you're teaching. Instagram, follow you there.
Yep, it's Eagle_Tactics.
Eagle_Tactics. There you go. Follow him. You're pretty about a class a month, 2 classes a month.
Yeah. So I'm full-time law enforcement, so I at least do 1 class a month. 2 classes is kind of like maxing out just with home life, family, kids.
And are you booking for 2025 currently?
Yes. So if anyone wishes to host me, just reach out and we'll get you set up.
Cool. And if you want to host us together,
yes, please
let one of us know, and we'll get that put on the schedule because we always dig time being able to hang out. So, okay, very good. We'll leave all of your information in the show notes, guys. For us, you know the deal. Gateway-defense.com. You're gonna find all of our information. Follow our Instagram, all that good stuff. Follow Justin. Follow me on Instagram. We keep you pretty updated on stuff. As you know, on this YouTube channel, if you're watching this on YouTube, every other week we're releasing a podcast episode like this where we're talking to people about certain topics that we think are important and not just an interview. And then every other week on the off weeks we're producing a YouTube video. So we're pretty dedicated to bringing you guys high quality content and we enjoy doing that, and hopefully it's useful for some of you guys. I think that's about all we've got. Thank you for listening to the Gateway Defense Podcast. Until next time, keep practicing shooting, and we'll see you on the range.